Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of Ask a Human Answers to Unanswered Questions. I'm Trish McAllister, the State Bar's law practice management attorney. And in each episode, we answer AI questions submitted by Texas lawyers in plain English with practical tips you can use today and clear guardrails so you can stay ethical and effective. Today's episode answers some general questions submitted by participants, and we are so delighted and lucky to have Joshua Weaver, who is the State Bar's Director of Innovation and the Texas Opportunity and Justice Incubator Director, also commonly known as TOJI, here to answer your questions. Joshua has been teaching lawyers and others about AI since it all began, so he's just sort of our little guru. And he also develops AI tools to make life more efficient. So he really knows what he's talking about. Thank you so much for joining us, Joshua. I know you're so busy. So.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm very excited to do this.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. All right. Well, I'm going to just start it off. I know you're kind of doing the general miscellaneous questions that we had. So there's going to be we're going to be jumping all over the place, but there's some good ones in here. And for those of you who are watching, I apologize if I'm going to be turning my face this way. I'm just going to be reading your questions real quickly. So does the State Bar share data, significant decisions, and research results with a generative AI platform?
The most straightforward answer to this is no, not currently. And I think in the spirit of the question, the State Bar does not currently have any deals with any labs where we are affirmatively sharing information. And also our internal AI policy is written so that we are very careful that we are working with an approved whitelist of vendors. And then within those vendor uses, we are opted out of sharing any information. However, to get to a full answer, there may be a small asterisk to this, which is that the State Bar is constantly publishing information on the open internet as it relates to the practice of law and adoption of AI. And there's no doubt in my mind that some of that information is going to make its way into the training data if it hasn't already. And so, just as a sort of public participant on the internet, some of our information is probably getting absorbed in some small way into the models, but the short answer is no, we're not sharing any information.
Okay, great. I do know, it's kind of funny. We had this conversation the other day about, we're getting a lot of calls about people, from people who are, picking up information from AI and calling our office, and it's inaccurate. So we're having discussions about putting information out there to try to, change the way that AI is providing information to people. So in that way, I think, everybody should have an expectation that the State Bar is putting that kind of information out there that will be absorbed by AI, like you suggested. So we'll move on to the next one. And I actually kind of love this one. It's one of the very first questions that we got, and it's kind of one of my personal favorites. It's a multi-part question, so just bear with me while I get through it. How should attorneys protect our profession against this existential threat? Why embrace technology that is based on unverified training materials? Separately, AI users typically release confidential information to and through AI chats. Are attorneys the sole arbiters of when employee agreements are violated by discussing matters with an insecure model? Relatedly, can we police judges from using these tools to investigate cases? Why are the punishments for use so minor? Can we accelerate disbarment of unethical users of AI tools? What steps, if any, have the Texas Bar made to curb the unethical uses that AI models invite? What steps, if any, can we take to stop AI models from using our intellectual property? What steps can we as lawyers take to stop our clients from using AI to compromise our cases? What litigation, if any, against the major AI companies should we be tracking? And I love this question because it really hits on a lot of ethical questions that are arising right now, and happening, kind of evolving. So to you with that multi-part question, glad I'm not answering this one.
Yeah, if I were to create like a running list of the most AI skeptical questions that I get when I'm out on the road talking, this would be a fairly good representation of those lists. So clearly, the person that asked this question is very enthusiastic and positive about AI and can't wait to no, no. These are really fair questions, and I think that one of the things that I always mention when I give a talk on AI is I'll do like a quick audience poll. Who here feels super optimistic about AI? Who here feels super skeptical and pessimistic about it? And about 50-50 in any given room. And I think it's really important to validate and empathize with any of the folks that do feel that cynicism, the skepticism, the pessimism about AI. There's a lot of unknown. And with the unknown comes, I think, a healthy dose of fear. And so I think it's very reasonable that folks have these types of concerns. There's a lot expressed in this question, so I'll try and sort of take it part by part. So how should attorneys protect the profession? Is it an existential threat? I don't think it is. And I'll disclose that I am an AI optimist. I think it is generally going to benefit the world. It is definitely disrupting the workplace. I expect it to disrupt the workplace more. That includes knowledge working. It includes legal. And, what I predict will happen is that being a lawyer or the legal profession and the ancillary staff related to the profession, that's not going to go away. At the same time, I think it's very reasonable to project that what we actually do in our roles in the legal profession will change and will be disrupted. And there will probably be a period of time that we are currently in, and this will probably get bigger and bigger as the AI adoption accelerates, where that disruption is real and it's very much so felt and felt in unpleasant, disruptive, negative ways for some folks. And so I don't want to poo-poo this and say, there's nothing to worry about, hand wave, just carry on business as normal. This is a very disruptive technology. So what can attorneys do to protect themselves and to protect the profession? I think the starting point of that is getting back to the heart of what does it really mean to be an attorney? Like what are attorneys called to do? And attorneys are across the board called to step in times of crisis, to step in when there are high stakes on the line, and to be the responsible, reasonable, analytical, empathizing adult in the room that can help guide other people through that experience. And I can imagine a world where, let's say, in a year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, I don't think it's going to be that long. I think it's going to be more like a calendar year. But let's say that we have AI that is super intelligent. It is smarter than the smartest human, including the smartest legal minds of our generation. Does that mean that, and let's also assume that it can perfectly do legal work. It gets it right not only 100% of the time, but it is actually doing better quality legal work than the best humans can do. Well, does that mean that it's, game over? Lawyers are done. We can retire now or, go find something else to do? I don't think so. And I think the reason why is because at a very base level, people demand and require accountability when the stakes are high. And so your law license puts you in a unique position to be a person that provides accountability for the decisions that are made. So I can imagine a world where AI gets so good that it is doing all the executing of the legal thinking and the legal work. There will still be a huge demand, I think, societally, to have a person that has skin in the game, being their license, that is providing that accountability, and that that person to hang the decision on whether that turns out to be a good or bad decision. So from that perspective, I think lawyers are going to continue. I don't think it's an existential threat because of my strong belief that people will always want to have a person to hold accountable. At the same time, there's a lot of things that lawyers can be currently doing that can help reposition themselves in as best of a position as possible in this time of uncertainty. So learning about the AI and how it works is a great first step. Getting yourself comfortable with using the state-of-the-art tools that are being developed and being released to the public. Right now you can spend between $200 and $20 a month to get access to the best models in the world. And that is an incredible arbitrage. I can speak from personal experience. For my $200 subscription, I am running up costs in the thousands of dollars, sometimes per day, sometimes per week. And yet I'm only paying the $200 for that subscription. That is an opportunity for me to get good at using those tools without having to pay the real cost. And that gives me an advantage as we're trying to figure out, what does the workplace look like? What does knowledge working look like? I think a really meaningful chart that was published earlier this year through Anthropic tells a very compelling story about what is happening as the AI gets better. And so the chart that Anthropic published, they showed adoption over different departments within their own organization of their own AI tool, Claude. And if you look at the chart, software developers have been steadily using it more and more and more over the last couple of years, but other departments like legal and finance were not using it really at all until early this year. And then early this year, they had a model breakthrough with their Mythos model, which is now a version of that has been released as Fable. And they also did some pretty significant work on their Claude app to make using agents and allowing agents to use the computer and use the internet much more accessible to sort of non-tech savvy people. And what we see on the chart is that AI adoption shot up within Anthropic across their knowledge working departments. So legal and finance and their other departments that are, more similar to lawyers, rapidly started to understand how to use those tools and the value of using the state-of-the-art models and agents and developing skills and using all the plugins and other things that these new models and tools can use. And I think that that really tracks with what I'm seeing out in the world in the TOJI program, where we have solo and small firms that are using these same tools to great effect to accelerate their practice and their abilities. It also tracks along with what I'm seeing in sort of mid-sized firms that are starting to understand and realize how much of an asset training their people on AI really is, and then unlocking the value of their data. This is a really big point. So as a sort of second stopgap, I know I'm saying a lot, but it's a big question. As a sort of second stopgap to the existential part of this, you have to realize that the AI is generally, right now, this may not be true forever, but for now, the AI is generally only as good as the quality of the information that it is seeing when it's in that training process. And so if you think about the legal profession, most of the best data is not available on the public internet. It is behind, paywalls with the leading service providers of legal research. It is also sitting around on law firm drives and servers that are not being posted to the public internet. It is being exchanged in confidential emails between lawyers and staff. And so AI is really, there's this big blind spot in the current state-of-the-art models where it really just doesn't know very much about what it means to be an excellent lawyer. Now, I think that's going to change. I think that there will be license deals that will be cut. There will be firms that will, see an advantage in training on their own data and maybe even providing their data to make the models better. But for the time being, one of the best things you can be doing as a lawyer to insulate yourself against these changes, to allow yourself to sort of ride out the bumps, is to not just get good at using the tools, but start understanding how you can leverage the data that you have internally in order to allow the AI to do much higher quality work. And we're seeing this all over the place where, you ask sort of vanilla ChatGPT or Claude a question just straight off the shelf, and it will give a very mediocre response. You ask the same question and you provide it with some of your internal documents and information and context, and it is suddenly capable of producing very high quality work. And so And it's important to note you can do that without sharing that proprietary information back with the lab, right? So you can do that in a safe and responsible way. I think training is super important. Education is super important, and you can't just stick your head in the sand, right? You can't just ignore this and pretend like this is not happening. The cat is out of the bag. We're not going backward on this, and so if you plan on practicing 5-10 more years, I think it's worth your time to start getting invested in this. There's a couple other really excellent questions in here about, the sort of touching on ethics. What about judges that are using these tools? What about punishments for misuse? What can the Texas bar do? And what about intellectual property? What about clients? Basically, how can we stop everybody from doing everything? and the answer is you can't. The judges are actually among the most eager group within the. I think judges have been the most eager among all the various roles in the legal profession to embrace AI. They are going to use it. You have to be educated so that you can understand and recognize when there has been misuse. And then the same thing when it goes, same thing with clients. Clients are not going to not go to ChatGPT. That cat is out of the bag. And so the discussion internally within the bar, if you look at the trail task force that was started a couple of years ago, and now that work carries on in the Committee on Emergent Technology. The discussions there started very polarized. We need new rules, we need new guidance, we need new ethics. This is such a disruptive technology that we have to rethink everything. And we brought in a lot of stakeholders from all different parts of the legal profession, and had an intellectual battle over what to do with that. And as we looked at the rules, as we looked at our ethical obligations, as we, poured through comments and decisions and guidance and on, what everybody ended up coming around to feeling like quite strongly, even the ones, even the folks that held the opposite belief originally, was that we actually have a really robust, excellent set of rules. And if you apply those rules, those ethical duties, the same way that you would apply them with any other technology at any other time in the context of AI, they hold up very well. And so, when it comes to judicial misuse, when it comes to clients bringing in, something that they had a discussion with ChatGPT about, when it comes to staff making a mistake, or you have a junior associate that made a mistake, or God forbid, a partner has made a mistake, you have to remember that at the end of the day, when you are putting your signature on a document as a lawyer, you are saying, my license potentially depends on me attesting to the fact that this is correct, this is true, I have considered this represents my judgment and my experience. And remarkably, the rules were written well enough that it seems like they really hold up quite well. So I think, if you are on the more pessimistic side of what's going on, I think that one of the best things that you can possibly do to protect yourself and also to curtail the bad behavior is to go sharpen up on those rules. Make sure that you have them fresh in your mind. What is the duty of technology competency? Be aware of the risks and benefits of the technology. That's pretty open. It includes, confidentiality rules. It includes evidence. It includes, representations to the court, and on and on and on. And so I think if you have that fresh in the mind, you will be well equipped when it comes to dealing with the general bad behavior. And then last but not least, there was a question about intellectual property, which I think is really important. And one that's related, which is sort of what lawsuits should we be watching? And intellectual property is a big open question in AI right now. It is really abundantly clear when you look at, and I'm not an IP lawyer, but I know enough to be dangerous. It's really abundantly clear when you look at IP law that we never contemplated any timeline, any universe where we would have to take seriously the idea that a non-human could create something of extraordinary value. And so the way that our IP law is, was written is everything hinges on a human being the driver of anything worth protecting. And now that is clearly we are in a different paradigm. And so, I can't really meaningfully speculate as to what will happen to resolve those questions, but I can give two things that are practical for attorneys. Number one is, in terms of stopping the models from using your intellectual property. If you are on a business subscription to ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, you are by default opted out of sharing your information with those models. So you are protecting your information, your proprietary information by default by just purchasing a business seat. And I think they're currently running $35 per user. So not expensive. On the $20 a user version, I think you are also set to be opted out by default, but you can actually go into your profile and verify that you've clicked that button in the settings to be opted out. Don't use the free versions. The free versions are where they are getting the data from right now. So if you really want to be serious about this, you have to go purchase a subscription so that you are opted out. The other thing is there's the Ross case. And so Ross was a company that was a challenger to Westlaw and LexisNexis, and they were sued by Thomson Reuters really early way before ChatGPT became a thing. And that lawsuit has been currently playing out in court now, years later, and they are the first of many lawsuits to try and resolve these IP questions. And it's going to take years for most of these other lawsuits to catch up and get to any kind of meaningful resolution. But if you want a hint about where this is going, go check and review what's been happening with the Ross case, as that's sort of the first in line on all of this.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's so great. And I do want to just kind of follow up with a little bit of information or a little bit of a comment on the annoyance and grumblings I've heard from lawyers about clients coming in, having conducted their own research, which is, it's going to happen. And, if you've ever been to a doctor and you're waiting for test results, or
I was on WebMD, doc.
On what it is you have, you've been on, Google or some internet browser looking for what it is, and you're going into your doctor saying, what about this or whatever. So this is happening in other fields and has been happening for forever. And it's kind of the first time that lawyers have really had to deal with people coming in with knowledge that's accurate or sort of accurate, and also dealing with people who are representing themselves in court. I think it's, people know that I am an access to justice, having been the former executive director of the Texas Access to Justice Commission and former legal aid lawyer and all those things. I'm a big fan of access to justice. And, while these tools can be an annoyance for a lawyer, the reality is it's going to happen. So if you are a lawyer that's going to be annoyed by that, then you may be losing clients, because I won't deal with a doctor if they don't let me ask questions.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that it's while these pro se litigants are in there, they may not be exactly correct, or they may not have their procedure down and all that other stuff. So, but it is a far better thing for them than if they were not doing anything at all. They have no chance if they were doing nothing at all. So in some ways it helps everyone if you believe in a legal system, a justice system.
I couldn't agree more. And to follow up on, I think you said that really well, Trish, to follow up on it, this surprised me, but then the more it sunk in, the more I realized there's really something to this. I was on a panel not long ago with Judge Xavier Rodriguez, and he made the point that while we are seeing an increase in sort of pro se filings, and we're also seeing an increase in legal filings from attorneys, especially the speed of the turnaround, so one party will file something and then it used to take 3 weeks to get a response out. Now there's a response out, the next day or even same day or whatever. His point was, even if it's not quite right, the the AI can help take a pro se litigant, somebody who is wholly ignorant of how the law works, and can help educate that person in a meaningful way. And even if it's not totally right, the bar before that was like a hand scribbled napkin, habeas corpus or whatever, And so his point was like, from a judicial perspective, it is easier and more helpful to read through a ChatGPT motion that isn't really right, but it's at least articulating the ideas of what the person is trying to communicate. And it may not be legally correct or procedurally correct, but it is still reducing the complexity of their job as judges to understand what is this person trying to achieve and what are they trying to communicate. And to your point, like, doctors have had to deal with this forever. Maybe it's, the legal profession is a customer service profession, right? So it couldn't hurt for us to work on our customer service a little bit.
Yeah, we need those skills. And all that said, I do understand that, especially in certain practice areas, we do need to counsel our clients that internet searches could be discoverable if they were being done before, before they hired us and before we have some sort of privilege established. So, and all of that litigation is still evolving. So I do understand there's some risks that need to be conveyed to the client and, about that attorney-client privilege issue. Okay, moving on to question number 3. Thank you. That was a brilliant answer to that long question. And, I do think people are struggling with these, and there are very legitimate concerns in here. So yeah. I appreciate you addressing those. Okay, moving on. Has anyone had complete success in an AI application asking the app to identify all errors and hallucinations?
Yes. And this is really exciting.
I want to hear this answer.
Yeah, this is really exciting. So the AI is moving very quickly. And one of the things for me that has been challenging just intellectually, as I've been keeping tabs on how things are moving, is, there's this excellent book on Bayes' theory, which talks about updating your priors. The probability of something happening depends tremendously on how up to date your priors are. What are your assumptions? What do you believe to be true when you are projecting out into the future what you think will happen? And so because AI is moving so quickly, one of the most dangerous things that you can do is to sort of take a snapshot in time, look around and think, okay, this is what AI can and cannot do. These are its pitfalls, and then just sort of freeze that in your brain forever on. And this is a very human thing to do. This is right. How we tend to learn. It's how we tend to navigate the world. This is a very human tendency. And normally, I mean, honestly, it usually works well for us, right? This is a successful way of dealing with the unknown and not being totally overwhelmed by everything all the time. Several things are working here together. So one of the things is that the models are getting better, not on a linear scale, but on an exponential scale. And it is hard for the human brain to comprehend anything exponential. If I say, I'll give you a penny and I'll double it every day, how many days does it take you to get to $1 billion? And you're just guessing at it, you're probably wrong, right? It happens way faster than you would think it does, because our brain just thinks very linearly as opposed to exponentially. And so one of the things that's been happening over the last couple of years is that the timeline of how long it takes to develop a better model and the jump in intelligence and capability between the new model and the previous model, the timelines are shrinking. And so it used to take, about a year to produce a good new model. Then it was taking about 6 or 7 months for a couple of years. And now, the whispers from the labs are that trend has continued. And so it took about 4 months from the last state-of-the-art model to the current known state-of-the-art models. And it will probably, if I had to guess, it probably took about 2 months for them to move from that to whatever the secret sauce is that they're currently testing. And then conceivably, before the end of this 2026 calendar year, we will be in a world where it takes a month or even like a week or potentially even days in order to make the same amount of jumps that used to take 6 to 7 months or even a year. And so that's a very exponential curve. So that's part of it. As the models are getting significantly better and significantly faster, that the improvement time is shorter and they are getting really, really smart between each jump, hallucinations themselves, just inherent to the model properties, have dropped like through the floor. And so it's not that models do not hallucinate. Hallucinations are, in the current paradigm, a fundamental problem to how the models operate. And so there hasn't been a model that is just out of the box hallucination free. But the probability of there being a hallucination has gone from all the time to sometimes to seldom to pretty rare. And so that's part of it. The other part of it is that the models have become, we've given the models tools. And so if you imagine, like, I think of like doing the budget for the TOJI program. If you told me that I had to do the budget for the TOJI program, but I couldn't use a calculator and I couldn't use Excel, could I still do it? Yes, I could. Would my chances of making a mathematical error shoot way up? Yes, totally. Right. The calculator and the spreadsheet keep my math good. We have rapidly shifted from a paradigm where the models don't have access to tools. They can't use the same applications as us. They can't use the same programs as us. They can't use web browsers. They can't search the internet, into the current paradigm where the models can fully take over control of the computer and they can use every tool that you can use. They can use Excel, they can use, PowerPoint, Word, they can search the internet, they can build their own applications to do, different tasks. And by giving the models tools, in addition to their increased intelligence and competency, they can now, just like me relying on Excel and a calculator to make sure that my math is right on the budgeting, the models can also rely on tools or even build tools in order to reduce and even fully eliminate errors and hallucinations. And my favorite thing that I teach lawyers on this front is that if you really want to design a system, let's say you just want to create a tool that creates an original petition, and you want to make sure that all the cases are real cases and there are no hallucinations, right? This would be like a simple but common problem. Instead of relying on the model to do all of the checking of the cases, which you could do, and using the state-of-the-art models, it's probably going to be right. Right? Because it's going to look at each one. It's going to call the web search tool. It's going to look online and verify that case exists online, just like a person would, right? Like, what do you do when you verify a case? You go online and you search and you make sure the case is there and you check it with your eyeballs. Well, the models can do that. But the other thing that you can do is you can also tell the model, hey, I want you to do a check of all the cases in this original petition, and I want you to not use AI to do the check. And what the model will do is it will create a skill where it'll probably use Python. You don't need to understand what that means, but it'll create a script that deterministically checks whether those cases exist or don't exist. And you remove the AI from that step entirely, so that you have.
That's so brilliant. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've been like, when I've done it, I've been like just using AI to check it, not removing the AI, but that's really great. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. And if you think about, the way that the paradigm that we were in before common use of AI, everything was more or less deterministic. You'd go to Google, you type in a search, and what happens? It takes that keyword. I'm simplifying a lot, but it takes that keyword, it hits a database, and it pulls up all the results from that database. And it's a deterministic progress. Now, Google's been using AI for a long time, so I'm glossing over a lot there, but that's the general idea. AI is using a probabilistic form of computing. And so it does have like an inherent, in its current paradigm, it does have some inherent weaknesses in terms of, achieving sort of complete accuracy. But the AI itself can design a tool where there is no probabilistic step when it comes to that verification process. And so by doing that, you are sort of combining the best of both worlds between a purely deterministic environment and a probabilistic environment. You get the intelligence and the capabilities that are afforded by the probabilistic AI, and you get the benefit of the reliability and the feeling confident, like I know for sure that this is right, by using the purely deterministic part in the right sections of whatever you're doing.
Yeah. That's so great. I just don't know why that didn't even occur to me. I mean, this is the thing. It's like sometimes you just need somebody else to say, hey, you can do that. I'm like, oh yeah, of course you can. Why didn't I think of that?
Well,
anyway.
if it makes you feel better, it also did not dawn on me for an embarrassingly long amount of time. It took a long time before that one clicked for me.
Oh, so. Yeah. It's like today is the day. So, yeah. I mean, I learned something. So this is good. It's a good Friday to learn something new. Okay. I love this question because it has a lot of caps in it. So I'll try to emphasize the places where it has caps so that people can understand. Since Microsoft and others are shoving it at us as hard as they can, and you can no longer opt out because in equal parts bravado and foolishness, they've decided that it is so super cool, that is indispensable. I guess I have to learn to live with this invasive, demanding, yet inherently flawed equals lies and hallucinations, and nobody is offering any solution for that. I guess that is reluctantly, I will have to find out how to make best use of it. Did I mention reluctantly? So, I just love this question, right? Because this person really understands that they're going to need to use it, and they don't really feel comfortable.
Yeah,
but they're going to take a growth step, right? So
yeah, you're throwing yourself into the unknown, and you don't like it. And I think that this is this is just such a. I empathize with this tremendously because this is such a human thing. It is such a deeply relatable feeling to realize that the world is changing and out from under you, and that you need to figure it out. But I don't like it. I don't like this, and I don't like that it's being forced upon me at this rate, and I don't like that I have no option, and I just I got to get on board is the feeling. And so what I tell people to do here, and this question comes at a particularly good moment, as it is with the sort of AI feature rollouts. What I've always told people to do here is, if you are at that point where you realize this is something I'm going to have to confront, it's something, I'm going to have to deal with this uncertainty of the unknown and the fear and the negativity that I feel about this. And you're like, I don't even know where to start, and I don't want to start. Yeah. Pick the lowest stakes thing that you can possibly think of to get your toes wet. And so what I tell people to do, and I still think, and I think now is like one of the best times ever to try it, is go to the App Store on your phone, download the ChatGPT app, and make sure that you're on at least the $20 a month subscription, if not the business subscription. And when you start a new chat in the ChatGPT app, for many people that are in this position, this will be the first time they've ever tried this, or they will have tried this like years ago, and their memory and understanding of what was current then is now like severely outdated. And so what I would tell you to do is go to the ChatGPT app, and there is right next to where you type in your query, there is an audio button, and you press the audio button and it will launch their voice mode. And what I would counsel you to do is don't take on a legal question. Don't take on work. Don't do anything that feels high stakes. Don't reveal any information, that you feel uncomfortable revealing. Pick something that you are passionate about in your personal life, like a niche interest or hobby. So right now I'm training for an Ironman, and I have a million questions, right? Constantly. For me, this is the unknown, right? I've never done one of these races. There's a lot that goes into it. I have a million stupid questions. Like last night I was thinking about, how do I fit all of the calories that I need to consume on race day into my pockets? Like, what do other people do? Are they mixing it all into their water bottles? What if that makes my water bottle really syrupy? Are people sort of splitting this up between their water bottles and like gel packets that they're stuffing into their pockets? Like, just like, I don't want to be the one idiot out there that is clueless about how to deal with this, right? This is very low stakes stuff. And it's just something that I'm naturally curious about. I'm passionate about learning more, and I have some interest in it. Have an audio conversation with ChatGPT about a topic like that. It could be sports, it could be movies, it could be home renovation, it could be, you name it, but something low stakes, not work related, and just experience what it is like to have a state-of-the-art model and to have that voice interaction back and forth as you chat about something that you already like. And I think out of all the potential ways that you could get started with getting more comfortable with this technology and seeing and appreciating what it can do for you, that is like the lowest barrier to entry. And here's what I've found. I've been all over the United States, Canada, talking about this with lawyers that, have a range of skepticism and not. I have had people come back to me a year later and tell me, hey, I went home and I actually tried that, or like on my drive home from the conference, I downloaded the app and I had a voice conversation and I talked about, tips for better lawn care or whatever it was, or I'm working on my golf swing and I keep, hooking it, one direction or whatever. And I was blown away by how great that conversation was. And then I kept going back to it and I kept talking about more about stuff that I just like and I want to learn more about. And then that was a good entry point into starting to learn how to do the other more advanced things and feeling more comfortable with it, feeling like you can go and take on some of the other stuff. So, keep the stakes low, talk about something that you're interested in. And then this is really good timing because they just updated the voice capabilities within the ChatGPT app. And it is something really special. It feels very, very natural. If you've ever called the customer service line and gotten AI, it is like, that it makes that look like the dumbest thing imaginable. Like, why did we ever put up with this? Because it's a truly pleasant experience.
It's funny because I had to call a doctor's office the other day and theirs was phenomenal. I was just like, wow. I mean, so much better than the voice nightmare we get or anyway. Okay. Good answer. And, I have to say I use AI all the time, but I never have had a conversation. Partially, I think I'm just a little hesitant because I'm such a verbal person that I don't talk to it, which is hilarious. Anyway, I think I'm going to experiment.
Give it a shot.
Try. And I know exactly what I'm going to talk to you about because I'm scrolling all night long on this one topic, this art thing that I do. Anyway, okay. This is a question I know from a criminal lawyer. Anyway, is AI being used to screen and identify child pornography?
This is a question that I've actually seen come up a lot. I can remember at least 4 or 5 times within the last couple of years where somebody's come up to me after a talk and asked about this. And, many different thoughts on this, but usually the context in which I hear this question is it is a criminal defense attorney or a prosecutor who's working on a case and they have a hard drive in a safe computer room that they can go to, and they are supposed to review just mountains of evidence. And it is, I think it goes without saying, this is evidence that nobody wants to look at. Nobody wants to have to go through that information. And it's just, it's deeply unsettling and traumatic to have to look through this stuff. So the answer to this question is yes, and also in some ways no. So if you are using a state-of-the-art model from one of the 3 providers like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini, there are some pretty good guardrails within those models to try and steer it away from conversations that could be potentially harmful. And so what people are not doing, generally speaking, is just like installing ChatGPT on their computer and then telling it, hey, go look through this mountain of evidence for this child pornography case and help me figure out what to do. A lot of the time you're going to run into refusals from the model to help when it comes to that type of work. And that's because, we want to protect society. We don't want the models to misbehave and end up being tricked into doing something that turns into malicious behavior. However, there are ways that you can use open source models and you can run them locally. And this is particularly well suited for the example where you have like the designated computer in a safe area, and then you can go and review evidence there. And so you can actually use like a local model that does not have those guardrails attached, and it can effectively help you go through and sort through evidence and figure out, what do I actually need to look at? What do I not? And unfortunately, like in many of these cases, the data is huge. So it's not like 2 gigabytes worth of information. It's like terabytes of information. Yeah. And so just from a practical perspective, it can be overwhelming for an attorney on either side of the V to try and sort through that stuff. And so that's one potential way to go at it. The other thing that's happening is that content providers on the internet are constantly looking for better tools in order to police the content that is being posted and hosted through their services. So if you think about, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, etc., they all have a strong vested interest in keeping this content off of their platforms, not just because it is morally correct, but because it is legally and practically a nightmare for them to have this content show up on their websites. And so they are also using AI to develop better tools for content moderation, which means getting better at identifying content that violates the policies, and also getting better at tracking down sort of the farms that push this stuff out, because the people that are pushing that content out have highly automated that process. It's not just like one person sitting on their phone manually updating stuff. It is, they have an automated system that is creating accounts, distributing that information, getting banned, then creating a bunch more accounts. And so it's this sort of never ending push and pull between the content moderation teams and the distributors. And AI has actually shown itself already to be incredibly promising when it comes to screening harmful content and in finding and getting rid of the root sources of that content that violates the policies. And so on that end, it's very promising. I can imagine that as this continues to mature and develop, it's still early days, but as those tools continue to mature and develop, I think that we can actually go a long way to sort of cut the snake off, at the head, rather than just sort of tamping around on its tail. So that's where that's currently at. But I think the spirit of the question that I normally get is like, can AI just do this for me so that I don't have to look at it? And the answer is no.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's actually applies to a lot of things. I mean, you can't just not look at the things that you're supposed to be looking at. At some point you can get a good summary, but I think when it delivers summaries, even, you have to go look at the original document to make sure that it is what it says it said it was, Yep. So, but I know, having done, domestic violence and sexual assault work, it would be really great if you didn't have to hear or look at some of this stuff, but of course you do. Okay. I want to be mindful of the time. So we're already at 15 minutes. Can you go another 10 minutes and we'll just make it an hour?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll just go on to number 6. We have 10 questions, but I don't think we're going to get to them. In your practices, how confident are you personally that economics will not drive use of AI as an alternative for human performance of basic legal analysis and deprive young lawyers in particular from learning how to think like a lawyer?
I think this cuts both ways. And my little brother's a software engineer. He said something that really resonated with me, which is that, these state-of-the-art models are incredible because it's like you have a tribe of expert mentors on any topic available at any time. Yeah. And one of the things that has happened in the legal profession is that we used to have a stronger mentorship system for training up young lawyers. You would go to a firm. It was more of an apprenticeship model. You would be closely mentored by the senior attorneys. And at some point, for reasons we don't have time to get into, that process largely broke down. And so there's a void right now in our profession of training up young lawyers and mentorship. And I think in a very like optimistic version of this, yes, what a young lawyer and what senior lawyers and everybody else will do for that matter, yes, that will change. Like what it means, what you do on a day-to-day basis will change and it will look different in the future. But I think for young lawyers, this is actually a boon, not a bane. I think this is actually an opportunity where they can feel free to ask any question, no matter how dumb and embarrassing it is. They are going to get more or less good enough advice. It may not be perfect. It may not be exactly the same quality today as what they would get through a close mentorship with a senior attorney. But you can still cover so much ground and cover it so quickly, and it's available 24/7. It's endlessly patient. It's endlessly optimistic and cheerful. It is an excellent teacher. Many times when I don't understand something, I'll just say, explain this to me like I'm a total moron, break it down in its simplest possible concept and then help me work up to a more sophisticated understanding of this thing. And I think for young lawyers, they actually have the opportunity to really accelerate their learning curve and get a lot of the missing mentorship, at least in some part through going to the AI.
I agree. I mean, obviously there's always going to be some skill that may be diminished, but there also may be skills that are significantly developed through the use of the tool that lawyers today don't currently have. I think about, I always think about my son, right? Because I often worry that I let him play too many games when he was growing up. But I can tell you that if it was he and I in an airplane that was going down, he would be able to take over the controls because he knows how to do aerial navigation. Every time I tried to play a game with him that had involved, aerial navigation, which is essentially every game, I just could not do it. I could not, my hand-eye coordination wouldn't work. He could land that plane, I would just be dying. So, there's always skills that are going to be gained and possibly things that are going to be diminished. But I also think that the ones that we want lawyers to have, like trial skills and things like that, you can have conversations with them that I'm going to start having with AI that might substitute for the mentors that are not around as much as we used to have. Okay, moving on. Sorry to wax, on. As a percentage of the whole, what is your estimate for each category of how many lawyers, legal assistants, secretaries, and support staff that AI will render unnecessary or replace over the next 5, then 10 years? Will law school enrollment similarly decline? And what's your best estimate of the percentage there?
So I'm going to piggyback on a report that is commonly cited. It came out of McKinsey, which is one of the most popular consulting analytics firms. And in 2018, this is pre-ChatGPT, they were estimating that automation, just sort of generally, could cut down the percentage of a lawyer's job and law clerk's jobs by 22% and 35% respectively. In 2026, they did a much bigger, much deeper dive into this, and their data claims that about 70% of legal hours are automatable through AI, 70%, 70, and that about 25% of those require human, social, emotional capabilities, empathy, and so on and so forth, and about 45% of those are just entirely fully automatable, no human involvement whatsoever. And I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think those numbers actually undersell it. I think that it's probably closer to like 80 plus, 90 plus percentage. And I think that is going to happen on a much faster timeline than what people are generally expecting. We are in a what's known as a fast takeoff scenario, where the AI has proven to be able to design smarter versions of itself, and it is self-improving in a recursive way. And that is why we are seeing these very quick jumps between, it took a year to make a better model, it took 6 months to make a better model, now it's 4 months, now it's 2 months, and on and on. And these models are getting that much smarter each time. It is in large part because the models have been capable of improving the next version, and every time they do that, the next one is even better at improving the one after that, right? And so I think people are underestimating the extent to which we will be able to automate both legal work and knowledge work in general. I think the canary in the coal mine is software engineering. Now, software engineering is definitely different from law in that there is a verifiable, it is easy to verify whether the thing that is built by the AI is the thing that you wanted it to build, because it either works or it doesn't work. It either has the feature or it doesn't have the feature. The law is a little more squishy and murky about, did it get to the correct result or not? But over the last year, the brightest, best engineers in the entire world went from, I use this occasionally, it's a little gimmicky, to, this is pretty helpful, I'm using it quite a lot, to, I do not write code anymore at all. And it would be a huge waste of my time to write code. And they're not out of jobs. They are getting paid. I saw salaries from some of the labs that were in the millions of dollars a year per person to work as a software engineer, and they are not writing code. And I think that is sort of emblematic of what will probably happen in other areas of knowledge working. I think, what it means to be a software engineer today has fundamentally changed. You are not focused on the execution of writing the code by hand, but you are very much so applying your skills and judgment and experience in order to guide and shepherd the AI through your workday. And you're able to do a lot more, and you're able to do it to a higher quality. And so, whether this means that law schools are going to get less applications or being a lawyer is going to be less popular, it's hard. It's impossible for me to predict. But I think that we are going to go through this shift where we are going to heavily automate the things that people have done in the past. If McKinsey says 70%, and that's probably a conservative estimate, I would guess a little more than that. And I also don't think that will be the end of demand for lawyers or the end of people working in the legal profession. I think that our role will just change, and we will spend less time in the trenches doing the actual execution. We will spend more time of our day doing all of the other things that we don't have enough time to do currently. Like, what's the number one complaint from clients? It is poor communication from their attorney. They want to know what their attorney's up to, right? So better client communication, sitting down with people, practicing empathy, talking to them, really understanding their problems, right? These are the kinds of things that I think will fill more of our day, while the AI continues to automate more and more.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. We'll make this, I guess, our last one. Well, do you have one out of the three left that you would prefer to do?
I would say we've already answered. There's a question about why AI can't scan legitimate sites. It can. You just need to connect it to the right source of data. There's who's responsible for curating the citations received from the AI. That's the attorney, right? You got to have somebody on staff that can do that. And then there was a really interesting question about how can AI on a Windows system know what to do for me when a lot of my work is done on a proprietary, unique, classic, non-Windows C-CPM MDOS based system. And I don't know who was it that sent this. This was a wild question to get among the other ones. But the answer is essentially the AI does not need to know anything about a proprietary system in order to become functional at it and to do well at it. If you have documentation for your proprietary system, which ostensibly you would, if you have this thing that has been built, especially if it's an older, like aging technology, those things tend to be well documented. And what we found with AI is that I see this all the time. in software, there are all these people talk about layers of software, and there are sort of these like base root layers where you are dealing with, the kernel and the core operating system and binary, and it's like the lowest levels of software. And then on top of that, we build all these other layers of software until you get up to where you're using a web browser or Microsoft Excel or whatever it is. And all the AI really needs in order to function and do well in those lower level settings is the appropriate documentation. And then it can crush through those tasks. And we've actually seen people that this is a huge problem currently in the world, is that there actually aren't a lot of living software engineers who understand how to maintain and improve these low-lying software layers, because they were written a long time ago, and then the folks that wrote them retired, and it's not like a fully lost art, but they're truly like there's a high demand for anyone that can understand those lower base levels because of this. And AI is actually really good at it. So what you need to do is you need to provide it with the documentation, and then turn it loose and make sure you have backups. But it's actually quite good at that sort of thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joshua. This has been fun, and it's been so great to, get to some of these questions that, are not specifically, a topic oriented kind of thing, but to address them in such a heavy and, thorough manner that you always provide. And I just want to call attention to your hat, because it's very, don't die. We didn't die. I think it's going to be okay. Life is definitely going to change, but, I think it's going to be okay. So it's a very appropriate hat.
Thank you. It's one of my favorites. And,
I love that hat. When I've seen it before, I was just like, I want to get that hat. It's awesome. I mean, for so many ways. I mean, it can be just interpreted so many ways.
I think, in any time of great uncertainty, you can always choose to be optimistic or not. And you can choose to approach it with a good attitude or not. And, your individual choice to be optimistic and to be positive does not mean that you are going to, control the universe and force the universe to come to a positive conclusion. But it can radically change your experience of the chaos and the uncertainty. And I would just encourage people, we're all on this ride together. This is in some ways beyond any one person's control where this is going and what will ultimately happen. But my greatest source of comfort is that if you look at, sort of every major technological shift in all of human history, there has been a time of temporary upheaval and disruption, followed by a clear quality of life improvement for generally most people. And so I think that's something to take comfort in, and that's my hope for the future with all this. So
I totally agree with you, and that's my comfort too, because I just continue to look at the history of time, and generally it works out.
Humans are highly adaptable.
Even when anyway, but this is philosophical conversations for another day. But it's a really good note to leave on that. Generally, it has led to greater rights and greater, life, quality of life for people when major changes and innovations have happened. So thank you to everybody who has joined us for today, and also for all of the webinars, or both of the Ask a Human AI webinars that we've had, both in November and then the one in April, and I'm sure we're going to have another one in the fall. If you have any other questions that you want to ask, always feel free to email me at Trish McAllister at texasbot.com. There will be a slide with that information up there. And Joshua, I'll probably be asking you to join us again, because you're such a great speaker.
It's my pleasure. And I think this is such a wonderful platform for getting, the questions that people really want to get answers to out there. So, submit your questions and let's keep this thing going. I think this is a wonderful service. So thank you, Trish.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Well,
All right.
see you
Take care.
next time. Bye.